Hey, Julia, happy Saturday.
Hello, hello. It's a long weekend.
It would probably help if I turned up my volume so I could hear you.
Oh, that always would help. Yes.
How's it going?
Good, good. Good, good.
You look lovely. I feel like I didn't get, fancy enough now.
Oh, don't.
I want to look elegant with, like necklaces and
Necklaces and stuff.
I haven't worn necklaces since my oldest was a few months old where she could start grabbing at my jewelry.
Yeah.
I haven't worn necklaces since then.
Yeah, every once in a while I pull out a necklace. It doesn't happen often, but today was a day. So here we are.
You look lovely. I love it. Now I'm inspired. I'm gonna have to get some jewelry because I don't think I even own any necklaces anymore. Hey everybody, welcome to Divergent Directions. You're here with Michele Barard of Urban Book Editor, Julia Black of Blacksmith Writing, and we are here talking. This week. We're talking Texas crazy and California crazy, which
look different.
You would think, but are they? Are they really that?
Yeah, they're not. It looks different on the surface, but underneath, not so different.
Kind of the same crazy. So I think it's really interesting what's going on. And Julia, since you are actually physically there in California, you're in a way better position to explain to the people what's going on there.
Yes. So in California, we are in the midst of, or we are coming up on a recall election for our illustrious governor, Gavin Newsom, who
your personal favorite.
I'm not a fan. We've talked about this on Shelter in Place. I'm not a fan, and never have been a fan.
Why? Such great hair, such great Anchorman hair.
Can you share a picture of Gavin Newsom?
Let me see if I can pull one up while you're talking.
How he looks very Hollywood, right? Like, here's the thing about Californians, right? Whoever ends up being the governor needs to be very, very well put together. A person with the looks of Bernie Sanders is not ever going to win the vote in California, or if they do, it will be kind of shocking. Not that there's anything wrong with the way Bernie Sanders looks, but he doesn't look very California at all whatsoever.
He's not a hot boy. He's not a hot boy summer type of dude.
No, he is not.
Here are a bunch of pictures of him, in some cases with other people.
So yes, there's our illustrious governor, Gavin Newsom. He is in his first term as governor, and there is a recall against him. And this has happened a couple of times in California, where in order to recall an active governor or an elected governor, they have to get a certain number of signatures. Once those signatures are validated, then a recall election occurs. There are two questions on this particular ballot. The recall election this year is on September 14th. On this ballot, there are two questions. The first one is, should the governor be recalled? That's a yes or no question. And the second question is, if so, who should be the new governor? And then there is a list, a very, very, very long list. Very long list.
I could have added my name to that list. That's how long that list is. Nobody would even have. They'd been like.
Last time we looked it up, there were 46 people on this list.
Crazy.
So there's a very long list of people, which means that so the way that this works, if the majority of people answer no to the first question, then it doesn't matter who ended up winning the majority from the second question. If the majority answered yes, Newsom should be recalled, then the person, one of the 46 who has the majority is the person that will become the new governor. Of these people, there are quite a few people that are on the ballot this time around, like we said, and they run the gamut. They really do
the
gamut. there is a woman who actually ran for a little bit of history. The last recall election happened 15, 20 years ago. It was a recall against Governor Gray Davis. And in that case, the majority of the people did vote that he should be recalled. And that was when we got Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a Republican, but he is very much what I call a historically California Republican, in that he's pretty much right kind of down the middle with a couple of things about states' rights. But
I'm going to qualify that statement, California Republican, given that the modern Republican Party, actually, the party of Nixon, the party of Reagan, actually came out of California.
Fair enough. But Schwarzenegger, well, let's put it this way. Schwarzenegger was married to a Kennedy. So he was essentially a Democrat with a couple of things that he thought.
Closer to a blue dog Democrat, probably.
Yeah. Schwarzenegger was actually, I think, a very good governor. There were a lot of things that I think he did quite well. This time around, so to give you an idea of some of the people that are running, we have Caitlyn Jenner is running. She mentioned once the recall was finalized, she immediately threw her hat into the ring. So Caitlyn Jenner is running. There is a woman who is a billboard model that is running. There are people who are running that literally, when you read their statement, it said, "Why not?"
Hey man, and why not?
And why not?
Why not?
Why not? So the majority of the people that are running are Republicans. There are a few Democrats that are running. There are a few people that are running that have no party affiliation. There are a few people running that are libertarian. But this has the potential to be concerning. There are some people whose politics really concern me. And they're the people that are the front runners, right? So Caitlyn Jenner's politics, I'm not a fan of. Larry Elder, he's a talk show, he's a conservative talk show host. And has said some things that are so concerning. That
he was in one of the photos with Newsom just a second ago, but I will put him up here.
So Larry Elder seems to be the front runner. He believes and has said that he thinks minimum wage should be $0.
Which, for those of you who aren't counting, when you work for $0, that means that you're enslaved, but that's just a technical thing.
That's just a technicality. If you don't have, if you're not qualified, why should you be paid for the work that you're doing? So the two Republicans that seem to be doing the best are Larry Elder and Caitlyn Jenner.
Why is this concerning? Not from a political standpoint, but I mean, to me, there are broader issues here, right? I mean, there are the implications for California. California could end up having a QAnon psycho.
And there are quite a few of those among the Republicans that are running. Yes.
And because it's just whoever gets the most votes, it's not even like you have to get 50% or anything like that. Whoever gets the most votes of those people, if you put Donald Duck on there, theoretically, Donald Duck would be so popular, he'd get all the votes. And you'd have a Disney character as governor of California, theoretically. So aside from the politics specifically in California, I think there are broader implications, because this is a tactic that's being used by certain people who want to push, what do we want to call these agendas?
Conservative agenda.
Well, that's so nice. That's a
Isn't
nice way
it
to put it.
though?
I don't think that's a true conservative agenda, which is I push back against people saying that only because I don't think that's what a true conservative agenda is. I think a true conservative agenda tends to be much more humane, but I'm not saying that. I call it a radical Republican or a rabid Republican agenda. That's the way I think of it, because true conservatives don't tend to be heartless, because they are people of ethics and morals.
In this case, I would say you're right. I don't necessarily think that was the case in the recall when Schwarzenegger was voted in. And the reason why I think that is because one of the other people that ran in that race was the current lieutenant governor. Was Gray Davis's lieutenant governor also ran for governor during, so there were, I don't necessarily remember what they were, but there were very clear indications that there was something going on in Sacramento that was not okay. So even, there were enough people of his own party that didn't want him in, that it was like, okay, we need to talk about this. That's not necessarily the case with Newsom this time around. And I think you're right. The people that have started this recall, and the people that are pushing the recall are rabid Republicans. They're Trumpist Republicans, and they want they think that California and the way that it's run is not effective and should be more conservative. And that the people in the middle, it's kind of the same issue we have in California that we're having around the rest of the country. The people in the middle of the state generally are much more conservative than the people on the coast, but there's not as many people in the middle of the state. So the people on the coast, their views generally win.
And the people who aren't winning are not accepting that they're not winning.
And they're not good losers. Like they're just not.
Well, I mean, and it's not about, the thing is that what makes the American, or what has made in the past, the American form of democracy, as imperfect as it is, this is not me saying this is a perfect system, but what has made it work to this point has been, okay, I lost, better luck next time for me. Let's all see what we can get done. And if I don't like what's going on, I'm going to come up to your office and I'm going to talk to you about it. And I'm going to get people to come and protest and things like that, peacefully protest, because that's the other piece of this, is there's a citizen involvement after elections, not just during the voting season. And what we're seeing now at a state level, more so, I think, at a state level. And if it happens in California, my theory is, as goes California, so goes the rest of the country eventually.
And actually, the same can be said of Texas as well, which is, when we get to
another populous state.
Yeah, which when we get to the abortion part of this conversation will be part of the issue, part of the discussion too.
But no, it's a really challenging thing, because there are a lot of what we're looking at is also what we saw on January 6th. Your guy lost. You don't have to like it. We're not saying you got to like it, but unfortunately, this is the way the system works. And this isn't the system I set up. This is a system a whole bunch of white guys back in the day set up. And I don't understand why we're supposed to. So the same people who want to say, I don't like that this guy lost, my guy should have won, those same people are also the same ones to say you can only do things according to the way the Constitution was set up, because these old white guys,
knew what they were talking about
200 plus years ago. Yeah, they knew what they were doing. So you want to be an originalist when it comes to certain things, but then later you want to say, oh, but this didn't work out the way I wanted it to, so let's overturn.
So let's overturn it, and let's find another. I mean, let's find another argument in the Constitution to back up what I have to say.
Or not even an argument in the Constitution. Let's just pick up guns and fix it in the cases of these people.
But I want to go back to the consent of the governed, right? So in the Declaration of Independence, right, which is the the letter that was sent to King George that said, hey, we don't care, we're no longer part of England. It says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The only reason why America has, or not the only reason, but one of the reasons why America has lasted as long as it has is because for quite a while, this consent of the governed has been in place, and people have always or often thought, okay, yeah, my guy didn't win, but part of me being an American or being part of this country means that I need to accept that the person that I liked didn't win, and that the person that's currently in office is going to do what they think is best for the country. And
theoretically, that carries down to the states.
Yes. I think we all have, I actually did not believe, still do not believe, that even though Trump won in 2016, I don't believe he was doing, as president, he was doing what he thought was best for the country. And so that's where it fell apart for me. I think there are others, though. I think he's an anomaly in that case. But you know, I can look at this, like when we're talking about the recall, I can look at it and go, okay, am I a fan of Newsom? No. Do I think he's handled the pandemic really well? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I don't think but the reality is, so far the state hasn't blown up.
Although it is on fire a lot.
Although
that's not necessarily his fault.
And during fire season, it's on fire. It's currently on fire because it's fire season. Terrible fires this year. But that's kind of where we're at. If it will be, so the election day is in 10 days. It's on the 14th. And we'll see how this goes.
I'm going to tell y'all something. Coming from Louisiana, which has historically been deemed one of the most corrupt states in the country.
Oh, California is just as corrupt.
Well, if you go around the country, you'll find that all of them are corrupt to some extent. But what I do want to say is we held the crown for the longest time. And at one point, it was so bad that there was actually a campaign. I forget who. It was when David Duke was running for governor of Louisiana. And they put up Edwin Edwards against him again. And for those of you who don't know, Edwin Edwards was governor for a good little while in Louisiana. And he was widely known as a crook. And they actually had a campaign slogan, vote for the crook, it's important. And I feel like this is a vote for the crook, it's important kind of moment for California, whether you like Newsom or not. I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, but I do think that having a cast of characters like the ones that, like literally anybody could become governor now, like it's a toss-up.
Become governor.
I think y'all might want to think twice about your strategy. But what I'm most interested in here is that it's not, I don't want to see this become a tax on Democratic governors across the country.
Yeah.
And then what would eventually become a tax on Democratic mayors across the country and city councils across the country. The United States developed, for better or for worse, or like it or not, into a two-party system. We have a two-party system. The Green Party doesn't have enough traction. The Socialist Party barely exists. So there are no other parties. It's Republican or Democrat for all intents and purposes. And until and even up through the beginning of Clinton's administration, I think that most of the time Congress was able to figure out a way to work together. My personal opinion, Bush v. Gore was actually the kickoff of, I don't get me wrong, I much prefer Gore over Bush, but watching this, especially, and at the time I was out of the country, so I was watching it from another country. And watching the US politics from another country is fascinating. I highly encourage you to do it.
If you're not in the US, that is.
Yeah, if you're not in the US, but well, I mean, at least you can still look at other people's
you can still look at international news and see how
this isn't the 1990s. We actually have internet on our phones.
We do.
But I say this to say that that was the beginning of the breakdown. And that was a Democrat starting it. Whether you think it was legit or not, whether you think it was right or not, the hang Chad business or whatever else, it ushered in an era, I think, of not accepting the peaceful transfer of power. Yeah. There was a peaceful transfer of power eventually, but not accepting the election results is really the better way to phrase that.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous for this country in the long term. And it set the stage in some ways for what we saw with Trump. Trump is a petulant businessman. He was not a politician. So he didn't have to take no for an answer in many cases in his business dealings. What made anybody think he was going to take no for an answer when they said, no, we don't want you here anymore? So, and I say this to say, we're not talking specifically about national elections at this point, but any elections. The more we have these challenges to legitimate results, whether we like the results or not, the more we undermine the basis of this American experiment. And it is an experiment. No other nation has been formed in quite this way before, with a diverse group of people, not all of them brought here not all of them coming on their own accord, not all of them with the same rights. This is truly an experiment. And if we want this experiment to be successful and continue, we have to think about how we're handling these elections, because that's just one piece of the democratic system. And we have to be careful about undermining that. And I think that's what my major concern is with what's going on in California, because what we know is what happens in California, what happens in New York, eventually make their way across the country. I'm not sure that Texas is quite the same way, but in this particular instance, because of the strategies they're using on this particularly divisive issue, I think we're going to see the same thing. And with that, we'll segue into. Was that a good segue?
That was a good segue. I dig it. I think it worked. So this week, a Texas law that was passed, I don't know when it was passed, but September 1st was when the law went into effect. And essentially what it did is it banned abortions after 6 weeks. And there are caveats to this law. There are stipulations in this law that make it more concerning than stipulations in other states. There are similar laws that have passed in other states that ban abortions after 6 weeks.
The so-called heartbeat bills. You guys have probably heard them.
Yeah. So essentially it's a heartbeat bill. So what that means is anytime, if you can detect a heartbeat after 6 weeks, 6 weeks is generally when you can detect a heartbeat. And
it's also before most women know they're pregnant.
Yes. And I'm not sure we want to get into the specifics of abortion and
well, no, just to explain why 6 weeks is critical.
Most women at that point don't even know that they're pregnant. So federal law allows for abortion. States are then trying to, have been for years now, probably actually since Roe versus Wade passed, but it seems to be getting more and more traction among conservative states the last few years. The heartbeat bills that have passed in other states are caught up in the courts, mainly because in those cases, it is up to a state officer, someone that works for the government, to make a case against somebody who has had an abortion after that point, or against
an abortion provider.
The abortion provider, right? So, and because of the federal law and because of long precedent, that can't be done. And that's why they're locked up in court. What the Texas law did, the Texas law removed state officers from prosecuting altogether. What it did is it gave the right of people to turn against their neighbor and it gave the right of private citizens to build a case against, that's not the word.
They basically deputized the citizens of Texas to go against other people that they suspect have performed an abortion after 6 weeks, or the woman who's received an abortion.
Oh, not only that, or anybody who has aided or abetted in it, which means that your friend that drove them, the friend that drove the woman there.
Theoretically, if she got the bus driver and anybody on the bus.
The person that paid for it, if it was someone different, all of these people can then have charges brought against them. And the private citizen who files the charges is granted $10,000. They can get $10,000 from the state to file these charges. And what Texas was hoping to do, and they're super clear about it, they were hoping that pro-life groups would then take this on so that they could start filing charges against people, so that it would essentially put the rest of the state on lockdown, so that most women wouldn't do it anymore. And most doctors and most providers wouldn't provide abortions anymore. There is still some question about whether or not a person from Texas who gets an abortion out of state and then comes back to Texas, if charges can be filed against them. That question has been raised a couple of times, but I don't think anybody knows one way or the other. So here's, and it's too early to say, really. But here's why this concerns me. It concerns me because it is encouraging people to turn against their neighbor and turn them in. And not only encourages them to do so, will pay them to do so. I actually think it was Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor.
Yes.
In her dissent, essentially said that it turns every Texas citizen into a bounty hunter.
Yep.
Which is true. And her dissent is scathing and brilliant, and I highly suggest you read it. But that's what concerns me the most, is that if we start here and we start paying citizens to turn in their neighbors and turn in their friends for this issue that we already know separates people widely, what's to say this isn't going to be done for other things later on? And I could very easily turn it on something that most conservatives are against in the vaccine. So we could just say, okay, let's say that there's a state law that says that everyone in the state, it's possible to mandate that anyone who's eligible gets a vaccine. And if they don't get a vaccine for COVID, then we can have all citizens turn in their neighbors and get a reward for those that aren't vaccinated. If we were to turn that against conservatives, most of them would be incensed, really upset.
They'd be getting their guns.
It would be chaos and mayhem, even more so than it is now. And yet here we are in Texas, doing it against something that most liberal people, actually people that are even, there's a lot of people that are even moderate, that that agree with abortion on some level. There are even really conservative. I read something, the Southern Baptist Convention in the 60s agreed with Roe versus Wade. In cases,
well, they don't agree with abortion. They agree with the woman's right to choose and work with her doctor on what's best for her. I want to see, I think this is where we get into some issues, is because people use that word abortion when it's really somebody making a decision for themselves. And that's something we need to just keep in mind. True. That's really what Roe v. Wade said. It didn't say, oh, you can get an abortion. It said, you have the right to make a decision. And because the decision was about abortion, that's why abortion is legal.
Mm-hmm. So what are the things that concern you most about the Texas law?
Well, I have a lot of things that concern me about it. First of all, I would not want a bunch of Texans running a weird bounty program like this. I think Texas is its own special snowflake already. And God bless the great state of Texas.
I think they would be highly offended that you called them snowflakes.
They might, but definitely it's a snowflake kind of situation.
It is a snowflake kind of situation. I would agree with that. And particularly because of this, of my example that I just gave.
Yeah, well, not just that, but Texas has all kinds of other issues that they have, everything from their textbooks calling enslaved Africans, migrant workers to their stance on the COVID, the Rona vaccines, to their own power grid that is gouging their customers and not giving them heat during the snowstorm,
and charging them $10,000, $12,000 for 1 month of heat.
Yeah. I mean, just insanity. I mean, and every time somebody says to me, maybe you should think about Austin, I'm like, isn't that in Texas? Don't get me wrong. I love Texans. They are the nicest people. You go down there, nice people, but your politics is weird, y'all.
No, it's true. And
it's not just Austin. The whole state is weird.
Well, and Austin, to defend Austin a little bit, Austin is a tiny little liberal pocket in a very conservative state. But I have very liberal friends that moved to Texas and they say, no, it's Austin, it's fine. I'm like, no, really, it's not. You're in Texas.
When things go sideways, it's still in Texas. That's all I'm saying.
You're still in Texas. Yeah.
But I have a lot of concerns. One of them, my biggest concern, and I've said this for many years, anybody who knows me knows that I've said this for many years, that I believe that the anti-choice movement is largely a white male movement that has co-opted white women, co-opted Christianity, and then gone and co-opted the Black church. That is my perspective. I've had this perspective for a while because I've watched it. I remember when these people showed up in New Orleans talking about if New Orleans didn't end abortion immediately, God was going to strike the city with a terrible hurricane and things of that nature, just terrorizing people. They're terrible bullies. They're horrible people, in my opinion. They can't, I have no problem with people having heartfelt belief. But when you try to terrorize other people, I think that's where things go go certainly outside of their so-called Christian values. So that's my opinion on that. But I also believe that a lot of this is driven by this largely white male movement. This is a largely white male movement that's co-opted other groups over time. And I think that that's because of the perception that white people are becoming the minority in the United States. Whether that's true or not at this point, we know that roughly 2025, 2028, it is very likely that white Americans will be the minority in the United States. And when I look at the abortion numbers, now this is a map, this is actually from 2018, but I'm looking at a chart, and I'll go ahead and share this so that you guys can see it. And not every state reports, not every area reports, but Arizona, 41% white women having abortions. Arkansas, 45%. Some states don't report, like California, Colorado. Connecticut, 39%. Most of the states, you're looking at higher percentages of white women than Black or Hispanic women. And keep in mind, most Hispanics consider themselves white, whether they are my color or darker or not.
Whether the country as a whole views them that way.
Right. But just saying that except in states where they have much larger Black populations, like states in the Black Belt, North Carolina, Alabama has higher percentages. Arkansas is almost neck and neck, so it's DC. I mean, DC is a mostly Black city.
Mostly Black city. Mm-hmm.
There are very few white people living in DC. So these percentages actually make a whole heck of a lot of sense there. And obviously the numbers are incomplete because some of these don't come up to 100%. And also with states not reporting, but Iowa is so white. I don't think I saw but like 3 Black people the one time I went there to do some training. And I'm like, where do you hide your Black people? I know they have some. They have a university and they have a football team. So I know they at least have the whole football team.
They're there.
Much of the football team. You have a basketball team. You got much of the basketball team. So I know there's some Black people there. But that look at these percentages. Now, mind you, these are, like I said, from 2018. But I think it really gives some insight into what some of the concerns are. If you have in the United States, of those states reporting, 39% of the abortions are white women, 34% is Black women, 20% is Hispanic. Most Hispanics consider themselves white. When they check off on the census, they're not checking off Hispanic, Black most of the time. Maybe your Honduranians might, your Panamanians might sometimes, your Dominicans might, but most of them are checking off white. So you're looking at potentially 59%, almost 59% of the white population. I use that in quotes because there's no such thing as white, y'all. Just that's another discussion. That's a social construct.
It is a social construct.
No such thing as white people or Black people or purple people or green people or yellow people. It doesn't exist. But when you look at those numbers, to me, that's the real motivation for this movement. This movement was really put in place for one significant reason in my mind, and that is to make sure that enough white babies were being born in this country. The women who have been waiting longest to have children in this country typically have been white women up until recent years. There have been more need for IVF and those types of procedures because as you get older, it gets harder to get pregnant, theoretically. I don't know if that's true because, if y'all are Bible people, didn't Ruth have a baby when she was like 180 years old or something crazy like that?
So she was in her 70s.
She was in her 70s. These Bible people, 70s. Where's your faith, Bible people? Where is your faith in the Lord? I just want to know.
I don't think it was Ruth. I actually think it was Sarah.
One of these Bible women had a baby when she was old AF.
Old. Like
if I was 71 and got knocked up, I would be killing people. You just see me go on a machete streak across the country.
And clearly clearly she had already gone through menopause at this point, because when God, like, it flat out says in the Bible, this is hilarious, it flat out says in the Bible that when God told her, she laughed at him.
Yeah, she laughed at God.
She laughed at God.
Bible people, y'all know what time it is. So y'all gonna sit here not having faith. But that's what I think this is about, is that so many white women have been having abortions. They've been waiting later to have babies. They've been having more trouble having babies as a result. And I think all of this kind of rolls in together. And we've been seeing this trend for a while.
I'm going to go off topic here because I think this is a possible solution. And we can go back to abortion in a minute. But you know what I think would be actually much more effective is just to legalize polygamy.
In what way? How would it help?
If you legalize polygamy,
let me just say, in the Black community, a lot of men are already living that dream.
Right. If the reason, if what you say is true, and the reason why they want to make abortion illegal is so that they get more white babies into the world, most of the traditional polygamists are actually very white. So if we can legalize polygamy and get lots of people all together, and it kind of handles the childcare situation, right? We get one man with 4 or 5 wives, or we'll just say 5 or 6 people that are all legally married together, then you can split it, and you have some people going off to work to pay the bills, and you have some people staying home with the kids, and everything's handled, but you still got all your white babies. And
how does it work? How does it work with, don't the Mormons have some, or didn't they have, I don't know if they still do, but didn't they have that where you could have a whole bunch of wives, you had sister wives or whatever? So, but didn't they have to be able to take care of the kids? Because like in Islam, the way I understand it, and anybody who knows Islam, please speak up and help me with this. The way I understand it from Islam, in the Islamic countries, you can have multiple wives, but you have to be able to take care of all of them.
Oh no, there's none of that, because there are plenty of stories and things that I've read. I'm some background on me. I'm fascinated with cultures that are very, very different from me. So polygamous culture is fascinating. Amish culture, fascinating. Stuff that's totally, absolutely very different.
And shout out to the Amish, by the way, because I'm just going to say again, I was deeply impressed when the Amish showed out for Black Lives Matter. I'm just going to put it out that was some cool shit. No.
They really are. They're amazing. Cultures where people have arranged marriages, all those cultures I'm fascinated with. But there are plenty of Mormon, men who are married to 20, 30 women. And the women are, in a trailer in the cold, with 6 kids, barely able to feed them. And he comes by like once every few months, gives them some money, and then, says,
See, I think that's so disturbing, because at the same time in the United States, we've got this concept that like Black men don't take care of their kids. And the research has actually shown that Black men are more involved in their children's lives than most white men. Well, I think it's fascinating.
And it's stereotypical. I mean, and don't get me wrong. There are, I'm positive that there are polygamous men that are.
Oh yeah. We're not saying all polygamists are that are that extreme.
Taking care of their, the ones that they show on television, right? With sister wives and some of those other ones that TLC had on for a while. They're, very involved, and take responsibility for feeding their families and making sure that they're all taken care of very responsibly. But there are some that don't, really. They're marrying 13, 14-year-old girls, getting them pregnant, and then leaving them in a trailer somewhere. That's not okay. And with me,
well, let's not even get into the 13, 14-year-old girls.
No, and my issue, with my conversation about, legalizing polygamy or polyamory or however you want to do it, where everybody can share resources legally,
needs to be consenting adults.
Absolutely consenting adults. Absolutely consenting adults. But that to me from my perspective, I mean, great. It's an easier fix. It's an easier fix. You're not oppressing anyone, and you're letting everybody figure it out for themselves. But part of this, right? A big part of this is control.
Mm-hmm.
A massive part of this is control, because the same men that are concerned about, the minority becoming the majority are the same people that think that men should be in charge of everything and women should be submissive, and the country's gone to hell because women went into the workforce, and I can't get my wife to shut up and stop sharing her opinions and all of that stuff as well. So,
well, the big concern about this, I think, is in this case, because this tactic, which is part of a larger strategy of overturning Roe v. Wade, or rather, I think that it's not actually trying to overturn Roe v. Wade, because the belief is that would be hard to do, because we now have 50 years of precedent. That was 1970 something.
70s.
I want to say 72 or something like that. So we've got about 50 years of precedent that says, nope, this is legal. You got to leave it alone. So the likelihood of a court being able to find a legal justification for overturning it gets harder and harder as the years go by. So this is actually a tactic that's being used as part of a strategy to circumvent Roe v. Wade at this point, or to undermine it. So what's happening is the abortion is still legal at the national level, but in that state, after a certain period of time, you're subject to bounty, which makes it effectively illegal. But it's not illegal in a way, because the state's not saying that they're making it.
Nope.
That they're going to enforce this law. So
they're even clear that the reason why they wrote it this way is so that they don't have to enforce it, because they can't enforce it because of legal precedent for the last 45 years, 45, 50 years.
So that's why I say, I think that's the biggest danger here. The biggest danger is that this is successful in Texas. The next thing you know, Louisiana does it, Mississippi does it.
I want California to do it against something that's going to piss all the conservatives off. If this becomes precedent, that's the way I want to.
Well, I don't know. If you get one of those Republican nutcakes that you got on that ballot as governor, they're going to probably start making everybody start drinking bleach or something so that they can kill the Rona.
The horse parasite medicine.
Yeah, what's inside
Invectin or whatever.
I forget it's
the paste,
because rational people don't take horse medicine.
Horse parasite medicine.
It's to kill worms, y'all. It's to kill worms. This is a virus. This is the virus. Microscopic. Worms, not so much. You can see those suckers. They're like, visible to the naked eye. Two totally different kinds of things you're trying to kill. They require different tactics, different strategies, different medications.
And meanwhile, everybody I know that's got horses and goats who needs that medicine to keep their stock safe can't get it. It's like what happened with whatever the
toilet paper.
Toilet paper. No, but the malaria and lupus medicine that right? Like everybody I knew that had lupus, it was like, they're calling their doctors for refills, so we can't get it. I can give you 4 pills. And it's a daily pill.
Yeah. They're endangering other people's lives with their insanity. Mm-hmm. And let's also lay this on the table for anybody who's saying, but Michele, Julia, human beings can take this medication. Yes, there is a version of it for human beings. Is to treat ringworm. It's a topical. Mm-hmm. So there is a human dosage. The dosages that you're getting at the feed store or whatever for the horses and pigs and
goats
whatnot,
and
that is probably 1,000 times what your dosage would be as a human being.
Well, yeah, wasn't there poison control? There was a huge uptick in people calling poison control.
Yeah, because y'all, I'm just gonna say it. Please go back to school. Please go to college and get some critical thinking skills under your belt.
Research methods. Take a research methods class.
I need y'all to really, I mean, this is me being an elitist biatch. Y'all need to go back to school. Y'all need to go back to school with this foolishness. And I need grown folks who were not washing their hands pre-pandemic to going back to school. That's what I need y'all to do. I need y'all to go back to school. Go back to school. Always be learning. That's what you need to be doing. Because this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. This is insanity. And listen,
to tie it all back into what's going on with conservatives and Republicans right now that's going on.
And I want to qualify that. This is not real conservatives. I have to stress this. Traditional conservatives are not lunatics.
This is true.
I will not, and I have to be fair to these people. Traditional conservatives are not insane lunatics. I'm not saying there's not one insane lunatic Republican. I'm saying as a group, traditional conservative Republicans are not insane. They disagree with you, but you can have discourse with them. Mm-hmm. They will find ways to come together for the good of the country. That is a different animal than what we are dealing with now, which is the result, in my opinion, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, rabid Republicans, those young Republicans from the 80s and 90s who became Tea Partiers and infiltrated and took over the Republican Party. And real Republicans should be ashamed of themselves for not fighting back against that. Mm-hmm. Take your party back, people.
And back to tying all of this in. Here's what's happening here, right? Right now, the fact that so many people are uneducated and never really learned how to logically read through something and know what's being said and actually like think through it, and are so willing, maybe not willing, but are able to look at something and let their emotions take over without logically thinking through it. All of those rabid Republicans right now are taking advantage of all of that so that they can take control. And this goes back to the Texas abortion law and the California recall. They're doing all of it right now because they have a deep, really concerning understanding of psychology, manipulative psychology.
And are willing to use that to hold on to power at all costs, even if it undermines what we call this democracy.
Mm-hmm. Is that let's move this to the spiritual, which is what we typically do. Is that where the spiritual aspects come in?
I do think it is. I think it comes in as I think it's fear. I don't believe that making decisions from a place of fear is ever a good thing. I've never seen where that's a good place to operate from. I believe that a lot of these people really fear the day that white Americans are not the majority. I think it's like the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment. The blue-eyed kids went first. They treated the brown-eyed kids like crap. Then when the teacher changed it to be the brown-eyed kids are superior and got all the privileges, the blue-eyed kids were terrified that they were going to be treated the same way. But the brown-eyed kids didn't do that because they had
empathy. And this goes back to the importance this goes back to the importance of empathy and kindness, I think, right? Is that what's happening right now, both on the surface and underneath energetically, there's a lot of battles and tug of wars going on right now. And I've had a really hard time like stepping back and kind of staying out of it, or even just getting to the point where I understand what's happening, so I know how to deal with it. But I think it's important to remember that what's happening on the surface is only like the tip of the iceberg. There's a bunch of stuff happening underneath. And subconsciously, I think on some level, I hope on some level, all of the white men in power have a deep understanding that their time is up. And they're going to have to start accepting everything as being equal, or the new way that the world is kind of shifting, and they don't like it. So they're reacting. And they're reacting like you do in a battle. They're not fighting fair. And so we have to just kind of, maybe sometimes we do things that are funny, right? Like what's happening with the Texas abortion law. The state set up a website so that everybody can turn people in. And
I'm sorry, that's just hilarious. First of all, I want to know who their tech people are.
Well, we can get to that in a minute, because what's happened since then, right? The second this went into effect, everyone on TikTok said, here's how you can start making bogus, turn in bogus people, so that you're not actually hurting anyone, but they have to investigate it. And then even somebody set up an app, some kind of a thing that you can download, so it'll fill in everything randomly. Right. And then there were plenty of people that just didn't care. And so they just started submitting Shrek memes. For whatever reason, the website got inundated with Shrek memes, and memes in general. People just started.
I'm going to encourage you guys to Rickroll them whenever possible.
Yes. Never going to give you up.
Never going to give you up. Never going to let you down.
But right, these are what this does, right? On the one hand, this seems like something like this seems like, oh, that's just so mean and it's a waste of resources. It's like, okay, but the law itself is a waste of resources, right?
It's dangerous.
And it's dangerous, because what happens if you hurt someone inadvertently and they're just taken on vengeance and they just decide they're going to turn you in? You then have to prove that you didn't get an abortion and hire a lawyer, and you were out tens of thousands of dollars, and they made $10,000 for doing nothing but taking 5 seconds to turn you in. Like this is frightening. The implications of this is frightening.
Also, remember Nazi Germany, turning in your neighbors. Remember, this is exactly what we criticized in the Soviet Union, that the Soviet Union supposedly, and I've never been there, so I don't know, but supposedly people were supposed to turn in their neighbors. And this is exactly the type of thing that leads to those totalitarian behaviors, the totalitarian regime control behaviors that we, as Americans, have always said we were fighting against. And again, the implications of that are frightening. So if Gen Z, God bless Gen Z, God bless them. Everybody's going to start giving them, no, God bless them. Like they're working the system and they're doing it their way. And what have they done? They've made a way for people to look at this and laugh at it. Right? Have you ever had it? And tax the system.
Seriously. And it takes that's all, and that's all what that's done for those of us who are terrified of it, those of us in Gen X and kind of older millennials and the boomers that are looking at this going, oh my God, it's East Germany. Oh my God, it's Soviet Union. Oh my God, what are we getting into? Gen Z looked at it and they pointed and laughed. They passed a train wreck and they pointed and laughed and said, nah, here are some funny things. And it changed the energy. And that is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Although I'm going to say for the record, I don't know any Gen Xers who are like really like kind of panicking over this. I think most of them are like, well, it's Texas.
It is Texas.
Yeah.
It is Texas. Not going to lie. Gen Xers
I think they're more concerned about how the Supreme Court handled it.
Yeah.
Which we didn't really super get into, but the Supreme Court basically just didn't do anything. And the fact that and it's called a shadow docket, where they basically just give a quick response, yay or nay, with no explanation. And what that does is it makes it hard for legal interpretation. So not only is there this vague law that deputizes people to turn on their neighbors, but now the Supreme Court has weighed in without actually weighing in. The only reason we even know who voted on it is because the dissenters actually wrote dissents and signed them. That's the only reason, because they don't have to when they use their shadow docket.
No, and the shadow docket, there is a place for the shadow docket, right? You know, with particular, it's been argued that there's a place for the shadow docket, particularly when it comes to kind of quick decisions that need to be made without, weeks of arguments, right? So the one that they gave me was like death penalty stuff, when someone comes up and all of the death penalty appeals failed, and you take a last ditch effort, it goes to the Supreme Court and it goes on the shadow docket, and they make their decision at that point, or they can.
And ironically, you would think that somebody's life would warrant arguments. That's why I say, I think it's very convenient, the cases that they use the shadow docket.
There's been, but this one is concerning. But the dissenting opinions, like I said, Justice Sotomayor's dissenting opinion is brilliant, and the other ones are too. So if you can, that's who we know who voted for him, but we can guess who voted for them. We know enough about the justices to know who voted for and voted against, I think.
Well, on top of this, I just want to mention about Justice Sotomayor. She's really brilliant. And if you haven't had a chance to read her autobiography, please do. It's well worth the read. All right. On that note, I think we should sign off now.
Okay.
It's a good Saturday discussion. Julia, as always, fun
stuff.
I know y'all probably get tired of me fussing at y'all, though. I fussed all through shelter in place. Now I'm fussing here. Y'all need to stop. Y'all need to stop misbehaving. That's why. Stop misbehaving.
Oh.
And then I won't have to fuss like your black mama. All right, y'all. Yeah. We will see y'all in what, 2 weeks?
2 weeks. That is Saturday, September 18th.
And on September 18th, we'll have music.
We will have music. And it will be at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's noon Eastern. And we will see you all
post a Podbean. And we'll post a Podbean later.
Yes, we will.
All right. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.